Alright folks, sorry about that. I just did a bunch of work that I thought was being recorded. But no! So, sorry about that. I checked the video on the computer and it was the last part 2 that I was seeing that I thought was this part that I'm working on now. So what I did was, I think I started adding the tentacles basically and starting to try and have this sort of transparent effect of the wings showing the tentacles through, but it's kind of it's definitely a process because it's hard to tell when you paint some of these areas, no matter how dark they are, they might not really show up later because they look darker when they're wet. And then once it dries, you might barely see it. Which is, I guess, okay, because you can always go over it as many times as you need to. So every once in a while, for the real dark areas, I add a little violet to this blue mixture. Where's my water? So basically I add the paint, then I go around the edges with a little water to try and soften the edge. Then I'll go in and try and add the transparent shadows here of the tentacles showing through the wings. Some of it might end up being too subtle, but we'll see. You can probably see how dark this looks right now, this particular tentacle, but there's a good chance it's gonna look a lot lighter once it's dry. Well, hopefully my old friend Mr. Rick McCullum, who I'm doing this for, will think it's Lovecraftian enough. So you can see how this tentacle is fading into the background, and that's okay, because that's sort of the effect I wanted anyway. I just got to control how much it fades into the background. I don't want it to fade so much that it can't even be seen. I'm also debating whether I'm going to go over the image of Lovecraft himself with something. I mean, I like the contrast of color, but I don't know if I want them to be totally separated from the background. Sorry, I'm whistling along to the newest transatlantic release. That's having an interesting effect. It's looks like it's actually lightening the color. So I think I'll use a little violet and blue mixture to deepen some of this. And again, this also will look darker when it's wet. I think I'm going to get a little indigo, a little darker shade here, and I think I'm going to do some more work to the top. Don't know how much of this is really going to show up once it's dry. Part of the reason that I decided to do this was that I want to play with this pseudo candle head. Wanted to get some light spreading and fading, which is what it's doing here. I mean, if it was to stay looking just like this, that'd be perfect, but I don't think it will. Yeah, I can see that I want this to extend a little bit further with a little bit more saturation of that yellow. Jeez, I keep forgetting that this needs to be put up a little bit so people can see the whole thing. Dummy! Big dummy! It's so funny when you work on something and you're in the middle of it and you see as you go the various stages either working or not working, and so you end up looking at certain pieces or certain parts of certain pieces as mistakes or failures or whatever, but the people that are looking at the finished piece, they don't see that usually, unless maybe it's another artist who can see some technical problem that went wrong or some compositional mistake. But it's like we have to, the artists I'm talking about, have to remember that the viewer doesn't see all those steps as the piece is being worked on, where you think, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. I do that all the time, and I know a lot of other people do too. I mean, it's getting close to the time when, with this piece, that I think I can finish it or call it finished. But sometimes making yourself stop is easier said than done. For example, I don't think I like that, so I'm just going to get rid of it. Goodbye, nose reflection. Just a second. Gotta get some fresh water here. Just in case I decide to use any more white. So I don't know, I may regret adding this red ink on top, but I guess I'll see. Well, let's see. I think what I'm going to do is let this sit for a minute, check to see if there are any comments I need to answer, and then decide if I'm done. Sometimes it's hard to know when you're done. That's the hardest thing sometimes. Larry asked, no music? Well, there's music in my headphones, Larry, because Facebook does not allow music that you don't have the right to broadcast. So I decided at one point that I was just going to listen on headphones, and unfortunately I'd rather play music, because I'd rather play stuff, you know, that I might be exposing to someone who hadn't heard it before. But if I can't post the videos in the first place, then it doesn't do much good. Alright, I think before I screw this thing up, I'm going to probably say it's done. And Rick saw it and said he likes it, so that's the main thing. I mean, I could continue to try and add highlights here and there and do this and that, but I have a feeling that I would just mess it up. Right now I kind of like the random hazy aspect of the background, and like Dana said, the candle turned out pretty good. A little bit too close to the top, but if you mat it in about 1/4 of an inch, it still should be okay. So, I think I'm done. Sorry I didn't broadcast the Blade Runner thing, but it was just too big, and I figured it would just take too long. And it did. It took a long time. So I think if I would have tried to film that, it would have been difficult. And I wouldn't be surprised if I'm running out of power on my phone now. So anyway, thanks a lot for watching, everyone, commenting, sharing, all that stuff. And I'll scan this so you can see a better version of it later on. Ugh, sorry. Toodaloo.